Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with all of the books that I really want to read this year in 2023. Well, actually, in the first 6 months, as I stated in my reading goals video, I am just setting goals for the first 6 months of the year because I don't think I really stick to goals in the second half of the year. I always come out guns blazing in the first half of the year, really excited and really wanting to achieve all of my goals. But I think in the last half of the year, I really fall off the wagon. So this is essentially the list of books that I would really like to get to in the first 6 months of the year. If this becomes a year-long project, that's awesome. The theme this year is around ancient classics. And I have a real love and fondness for the ancient classics because I was a classics student for 2 semesters in undergrad before I went over into history. But even when I did go into history, I tended to stay kind of in the classical or medieval period for the most part. And so the majority of the classes that I took were classical in nature. The language that I took was Latin. So I'm just really partial to things that were written in ancient Rome in particular. And this has just been something that's been at the back of my mind the past few months in terms of a theme, because I have been really wanting to return to things that I really loved. So I've been wanting to reread things. And I've also been wanting to read things that are new to me. But when looking back at my reading lists, looking back at Goodreads and thinking back on the university experience, I know there are so many of these works that we read in part for a class, but never read completely. So those are kind of my priorities, things that I think are going to fill in the gaps for me. Going hand in hand with that, I really wanted to challenge myself to do something on BookTube alongside this project because I really enjoy watching individual book reviews. So my ultimate goal with this is as I finish an ancient classic that I give it a dedicated video. I think that is such a joy to watch. And specifically, I really like something in the vein of, say, Steve Donahue's March of the Penguins that he did a couple of years ago, where he kind of broke down what the book meant to him, but he also talked about it in kind of a wider context and how it fit into kind of the Western canon. And he would also discuss translations that he thought were great, stuff like that. And I just really like an all-encompassing video that's really discussing a work. And so that's kind of my secondary challenge. The first challenge is to read these. The second challenge is to come in and review them. And I think that will be really fun. I will say there aren't a lot of Greeks here. I am just not really interested in rereading plays this year. But I also think when looking back at my university experience, Greek stuff tended to be stuff that we read in full, and I am just so much more of a Roman girl than I am a Greek girl. So the majority of these are Roman, and so let's go on and get into my list. I think we have to start with the big 3. They sit behind me on this bookshelf. Y'all see them all the time. There they are, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid. These are the big 3 when you're talking about ancient classics. They are epic poetry, and they kind of work together very nicely. They come together very conjunctively. My goal with this is to read new translations because these will all be rereads for me. My ultimate dream for the Iliad and the Odyssey is to read the Emily Wilson translations back to back. Emily Wilson has announced that her Iliad translation is coming in September of this year. I don't know if I can wait that long, but I think it would be really fun to read them in that translation. I have heard so many good things about her Odyssey translation. My thing with the Odyssey is that it has never been my favorite. I have read it 3 times, all in this edition, all in this translation, which is done by Robert Fagles. And I think on a story level, the Odyssey just doesn't speak to me as a reader the same way that the Iliad or the Aeneid does. The Iliad is probably objectively my favorite of the 3, but on a personal level, I love the Aeneid. The Aeneid is something that I had to translate most of, not all of, in Latin class in university. That was our final project. And so once you've spent a long amount of time with the work, you build a relationship with it. And I feel like I have a very personal relationship with the Aeneid now. And I have never been truly fond of many of the English translations that I have tried. Now, I've never read many to completion because I often get turned off very quickly. So I would love to know if you have a suggestion on a great translator for the Aeneid down below. I think some of it is, I have always heard this, and now I know it to be true, A lot of times people will tell you when you have translated something and you have been able to read it in the original, you are not going to be able to find a translation that you like because it doesn't translate the beauty in the way that you would like it to. And because you have translated it before, you know how you would like it done. It's been long enough ago for me to just forget what I said about the Aeneid and how I would have translated it. So I'm really excited about this. I think what I'm going to do is go in reverse order. Go the Aeneid, Odyssey, and then Iliad so that I can read the Emily Wilson translation when it comes out. I am so pumped about that. I do tend to reread the Iliad every couple of years. I did read it, I think, the last time in maybe 2020 or 2021. So I'm definitely due. I believe the only other Greek on my list is Plato, and specifically I am interested in the Republic, which is a work of philosophy. Now, I would say I am not really a philosophy reader, though when I look back at 2022, I think the majority of the books that I rated highly were very philosophical in nature. They just weren't straight philosophy, and that's what this is, and that really intimidates me. I picked this up because a K-pop idol, Taemin, based an entire album and music video around concepts from this. And when I initially watched the music video and listened to the album, I thought he was talking about Dante. And speaking to a couple of Korean subscribers, they told me he's making reference to Plato's Republic. And so I was really excited by that, to think that Plato's Republic is really in conversation with Dante's Divine Comedy. And I've always known that Plato was an influence on Dante, but I didn't know that the concepts were going to be so very similar. So I am really excited about this, but I'm very, very intimidated. I think my goal with this is to read this across many months, but I am just going to be very forgiving with myself. And if I have to DNF this, I have to DNF it. We then have a perennial favorite of mine in terms of ancient classics, and that's the 12 Caesars by Suetonius. This is a work of ancient history where Suetonius is telling you about 12 of the Roman emperors, and it is very gossipy in nature. It's very much like leaning in to tell you a secret. Hey, have you heard this about so-and-so? And I really like that. Suetonius is maybe not very straightforward with his history. It's maybe not how we would like history to be written today, but he is very interested in small vignettes and stories about these figures, which is a lot of why I got interested in history. And so I think is why Suetonius has always worked for me. This will be a reread for me, and it's one that I'm very much looking forward to because it's been a very long time. Let's keep in the realm of ancient histories, specifically Roman histories. I would love to read some Livy. Livy is one of the ones that I know I read part of, but probably did not read to completion. Livy is an ancient writer who wrote a work many, many books long about the history of Rome, and we only have a few of those books surviving. And so a lot of those that are surviving are from Rome's very early history, specifically its kingdom period. And that's the edition that I have here, is the early history of Rome, talking about the legends of Romulus and Remus. I've liked Libby in the past, but he is not my favorite. So I'll be interested to see if my opinion on him has changed at all, or if I am just really going to need more context for his work. If I had just read everything straight through, would I be happier? I think that's probably the case. When you are reading things that have just been pulled from a work, you are losing context, and you're losing quite a bit of what the author intended. And I feel like we read a segment of Livy's books, but we did not read them all. And so I think it'll be interesting to go back and really look at Livy and look at what we have from him, and hopefully read it in totality. My favorite ancient historian is Plutarch. I have a real fondness for Plutarch because I think he was kind of into Antony and Cleopatra. I think he was really into the romance there. Plutarch's most famous work is the Parallel Lives. And what this was a pair of biographies back to back to back of a Greek and a Roman historical figure. He would pair them on kind of the strata that they occupied in society, but he would also pair them based on moral grounds, which is what was really interesting. In the modern day, Plutarch is almost never published together. It's almost never done as the Parallel Lives. You get something like this, which is 9 Greek lives or 9 Roman lives, because That's kind of how we separate history today. Plutarch is a very interesting historian because he's just so personal with these figures. And Plutarch, I think, essentially invented the genre of the biography. He's always been my favorite. I'm really partial to him, and I'm really looking forward to rereading him. And technically, Plutarch was Greek. He wrote in Greek. So I think we can count him as Greek. It looks like we have 4 Greek works on this list. I don't feel so bad now. It hurts me, it pains me to talk about the next writer on this list because I think y'all know by now I have a personal vendetta against him. And that is Caesar, Julius Caesar. This is the Civil War. Here's the thing. I have never liked Caesar. I think it's interesting. I think his life is interesting. I think he is an interesting figure. I think he would probably be very interesting to talk to. Again, coming from a Latin background, you have to translate him first. He's often the first writer that they give you as a Latin student because his Latin tends to be pretty simple, pretty easy to translate, and because he talks about himself in the third person. And there's just something about the arrogance there that's always rubbed me the wrong way. And so I have never liked Caesar, and I have specifically never been interested since Latin class. I have never been interested in reading his writing in translation. And so this will actually be a first for me. I have never read any of his writings in translation to completion. The Civil War is about his fight with Pompey. And I'll say this for Caesar, I know I'm harsh on him, but he's often in the right. And I personally think he was in the right in a lot of what he did with Pompey. And so I'm going to be interested to see it from his side. Now we know he is going to be the hero, but he's also going to be the victim, and none of this is going to be his fault. So maybe it's going to be fun. I'm just going to let loose because Caesar was a drama queen. At heart, he was just into drama. And so I'm going to have fun with this. I think this might be a fun one, but I am going to lower my expectations. I have never really enjoyed his writing. And so I'm going to go into this open-minded and ready to have a good time. So this is one that I'm apprehensive about, but I do really want to try it. Let's get into my stack of Ovid. I have 3 things by Ovid that I would like to read this year. Actually 4 things, if I can find the other. But one of these is a big reread for me, and it's one of my all-time favorites, possibly other than the Aeneid, my favorite Roman epic poetry. That is the Metamorphoses. I love this to death. I mean, truly I do. And so I'm excited to try a new translation of this. I have also worked with Ovid in Latin a little bit, and his Latin is gorgeous. I mean, just beautiful. Truly a poet. I mean, really gorgeous stuff. And so I am really excited about this one. This is the one of the rereads that I think I am looking forward to the most out of the poetry section. This is one that I have raved about time and again, but I just truly love it. So I'm very excited about this. I'm going to be trying the translation by A.D. Melville. I have never tried them before to my knowledge, but I just had to pick it up in Oxford. I found this used, and I love the Oxford translations of ancient classics. And so I'm really excited about this, and I'm really looking forward to trying somebody else's translation. We then have the Fasti, which is Ovid's last major work. It sounds like it's going to be very interesting. This is one that I have never read, and I am so excited about it because I've heard many good things, but not nearly as many good things as I have heard about the erotic poems. These were some of the ones that I believe we translated in Latin class, if you can believe it. I'm sure it was some of the tamer ones, but it seems like it was very short, pithy poetry that we got to translate from him. And it seems like there was a lot to kind of laugh about, be very tongue-in-cheek about. So I feel like it had to have been pulled from the erotic poems. Ovid had 4 major works. In an ideal world, I would read all of them, but I know this is a very long list. I'm not going to get to all of these things, and I would really like to prioritize stuff that is on my shelf right now. And so I'm just going to keep it capped at 3 for Ovid, but if we get to all 4, we get to all 4. I'll be shocked if that happens, but I would also be delighted. We also have Horace. I have his complete poetry here. Really pumped about this because I've always been fond of Horace. I really like him. Dante likes him too, and I think that's probably why I've imprinted love onto Horace, because I don't feel like what I read from him in university was all that memorable. We certainly didn't read everything that he had. So I'm excited to go back and reread the poetry of his that I have read before, but really experience something new here. It's been so long, I think basically that reading this will be like reading it for the first time. Then we have Catullus. I love Catullus. I know everyone says this, but Catullus is like a hidden gem. I don't feel like many people talk about Catullus. He's really quite fun. And this is a really interesting edition because it includes the Latin on the opposite page, which is really exciting. I don't remember a thing of Latin. I really truly don't. But it would be interesting to put that to the test. This is Catullus's complete poetry. It's really short, especially when you consider that it's paired with the Latin on the opposite page. So it's really half this length. This is hopefully one that I will hammer out early because I'm really looking forward to this. I would love to be reading some poetry right now, so I think maybe Catullus is who I will pick up first. We do have another Greek on this list. That's Apollodorus. This is the Library of Greek Mythology. This is one of our great ancient sources for Greek mythology. And this is another one that I feel like I have read piecemeal here and there, but never to completion. And I am really excited about this. I think it's going to be really enjoyable. This is a great work in terms of reference, but I think it's going to be really fun to read straight through. I feel like I always utilized it as a reference text, and so I never read it fully. But I'm very optimistic about this, and I think this will probably be a new favorite for me, especially in the realm of Greek classics. Tentative things on my TBR would be the works of Cicero. To my knowledge, I have never tried Cicero. I'm very interested in him. I would like to read some of his writing, but I think he's going to be a bit of a hard sell for me. I would also love to try again St. Augustine or St. Augustine. I read the Confessions a couple of years ago and I had major problems with it. I think a lot of it came down to the translation. I just felt like I was really at arm's distance from it. It was a very, very difficult book to read. And then I just truly did not get on with it, sad to say. And I know St. Augustine is a big favorite for a lot of people. And so I would love to read him again. So I really think I should probably get a different translation of the Confessions. But I'm also very much interested in City of God. I feel like you need to read the Confessions before you get into City of God. So I would like to kind of refresh myself before I made that journey, if that even happens this year. But I've had City of God on my yearly TBR for the past few years, and so I would really like to get around to it. I don't know if 2023 is the year, but it's certainly a year to revisit St. Augustine. Then we have Tacitus. I don't have anything in particular by Tacitus that I want to pick up. I'm very open with this. I feel like Agricola is one that I want to pick up in Germania. And I think those will be very, very interesting. I tend to really like ancient historians, so I feel like I'll probably get on with Tacitus, but I don't know where he will rank for me. Last but not least is Josephus, who was an early historian of the church. And this is something that has always fascinated me, and it is just endlessly fascinating to me, early church history. I truly think it is some of the most interesting stuff you can read. And I have never read Josephus. He was a historian of the 1st century, I believe. And he was kind of on the ground for some of the big things going on out in Jerusalem. But he was specifically a Roman historian. And Josephus is a very important church historian even today. I have very, very high hopes for him because I adored, a couple of years ago, I adored Eusebius's History of the Church, one of my favorite ancient classics that I've read, but certainly not for everyone. I think Josephus will probably be a bit more approachable, and I'm really, really excited about him. And so he is definitely one of the major historians that I want to try. I think one of the big themes for the year is just that I'm very much interested in ancient historians, specifically Roman ancient historians. I would love to know down below what your favorite ancient classics are, if there are any that you feel like I should include on this list. A lot of things that I haven't included on this list I have read or I have reread recently. So one of my perennial favorites is The Civil War by Lucan. I know it doesn't work for everybody. I know it doesn't, but I reread it recently and it's one of my favorite works of epic poetry. So I really enjoy that. So there are some things that I have certainly reread in recent years and I don't feel like I need the refresher on, But some things I always am talking about. I'm always saying, oh, I'm going to reread the Aeneid, and then I never do. And I feel like making it a concerted effort and making it a real goal for the year is the only way that it's going to get achieved. And I think I'm also going to be holding myself accountable by saying that I would do a dedicated video for each one of these. I hope that that really comes to fruition and that I really do it, because I think it'll be really fun and I think it'll be a great way to look back on this project. I would love to know down below if you have read any of these. I would love to know what your favorite ancient classics are, but that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.